right?
Good evening. This is a meeting of the Burnsville Economic Development Commission. I'm Chairman Gene Grzini. On my left is Vice Chairman Ari Silke. On my right is Roger Kleppe, Craig Reapers, Chris Androwski, and Chris John. We'll begin with asking if there's any new items to be added to the agenda.
Nothing, Mr. Chair. We published the newer agenda with the one addition on it.
Okay, good. All right.
Do you need a motion for that one or not?
No.
Okay.
And we'll need a motion for the whole agenda as normal,
Okay.
Commissioner.
Okay, entertain a motion to accept the adoption of the agenda as it is.
So moved.
Second? During the discussion, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Okay. Also, a motion for adoption of the minutes from April 10th, 2013. Mary?
Second?
Okay, we've got that. No discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Open business forum, we have two guests out there. Are they here for the open business forum, or? No, okay. Open the business update, I think it's you, Skip.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Niehaus, I'm sorry.
Our PowerPoint cranked up here, and we'll be ready to go. Commissioners, this item is an update of our recently started initiative called Open to Business. As you recall, it started in January of this year. It is a partnership between the Dakota County Community Development Agency, the cities of Dakota County, and the chambers of Dakota County. A consultant was hired specifically to work in Dakota County. She's employed by an association called the Metropolitan Consortium of Community Developers, which have run the Open to Business program in some other cities and counties for a number of years, and they're now expanding here out into the Dakota County. The consultant holds a walk-in time once per month in each city. In Burnsville, she's here from 1 to 3 on the third Wednesday afternoon of each month. And the program is basically set up to assist startups and small businesses, provide consulting help, marketing, strategic planning, business planning. They can also do some loans. It's a very good program. We just recently got the results for the first quarter, and I should point out that even though we started in January, January was kind of the getting going month. So really the results you're going to see are more results that occurred in February and March. Specifically to Burnsville, she met with 10 clients. There were actually 36 clients across the county that she met with in February and March. And a client would be either a startup or a business or a resident of Burnsville or the county that could have a business elsewhere, but because they're a resident of Burnsville and or the county, they can access this program. We're proud to say, obviously, that we had 10 of the 36, so we led the league in clients. The types of clients that she was working with over the last couple of months are people looking at opening a restaurant, opening up a house-sitting business, a title company, a fast food restaurant, fitness studio, an embroidery business, a beauty supply. So they're kind of all over the board. And she was primarily working with them on business plans, general issues, and those general issues could even be such things as how do I go about getting a permit from the city or the state or whoever I need to get a permit from, or I don't understand how to do this, how would I do that, I don't know what kind of taxes I'm going to have to pay. So it's across the board, and some of you have started businesses, so you know the types of questions that you went and asked. They did actually give one loan during the first quarter, a loan for a little over $12,000 to one of our residents who owns actually owns a computer business in the Central Corridor over in St. Paul. And that loan actually is helping that business retain 2 employees in the Central Corridor over there. They are also in the process of helping with some facilitation for another business for a loan for the start of a fast food restaurant. And in fact, the house-sitting business is beginning to start. So actually, we ended up with a business in the very first quarter of this process. In general, I think that the first quarter results were more than anyone expected, certainly more than any of the folks from MCCD expected. She had a lot of activity. All of the cities in the county did a lot of advertising. The chambers did a lot of advertising, so I think that spurred all of that activity. So in general, it's off to a pretty good start. We just wanted to kind of give you an update, since we had brought it to you originally. I will certainly answer any questions the commission has regarding the program and/or if you have any comments regarding the program.
Mr. Ninhouse, would we be getting a quarterly report on that or a monthly report on the activities there? Or
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If the commission wishes, we can certainly, we are given quarterly reports. We can certainly bring whatever is the latest quarterly report to what the next EDC meeting. If you would like those basically added to your agenda on an ongoing basis, we can certainly do that.
Gentlemen?
I think it's worthwhile. I mean, it's obviously economic development, so I think it'd be appropriate.
Commissioners, we'd be happy to add that to your upcoming agendas to do a quick update.
Any other questions, gentlemen? Thank you, Scott. Thank you very much. Okay, we've got council liaison comments.
Councilmember Sherry could not make it, Mr. Commissioner. That item should have actually been pulled from your agenda.
I'm sorry, I think I went to the wrong agenda again. Okay, greater MSP update, and that is going to be you again, Mr. Ninhouse.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As you may recall, back in 2010, we did bring before you an initiative started by the Itasca Group to do regional marketing for attraction and retentions of companies. You, in fact, recommended to the City Council that we become a contributor to that activity. Once it got off the ground, the activity was named Greater MSP, focusing on the greater Minneapolis-St. Paul region. It's basically a public-private partnership. It's put together to both attract and retain businesses within the 13-county region. The City of Burnsville contributes $25,000 a year to this effort, and we have made that contribution for 3 years now. The folks at Greater MSP have engaged in both national and international marketing. They travel to a number of trade shows. They have gone overseas a number of times. They have established some overseas locations to promote the Minneapolis-St. Paul region overseas. Any major conference you can think of across the United States, it's likely that they will attend. They also make visits on major corporate headquarters to talk to them about if you need a satellite branch, satellite location, consider the Minneapolis-St. Paul region. So they have done a phenomenal amount of marketing in the couple of years they've been in existence. They've also done a couple of different studies, kind of like what does the world think about the Minneapolis-St. Paul region. Not surprisingly, they think it's cold. But they also acknowledge that we have a number of Fortune 500 companies, and it is interesting in some of the studies that a little bit more is known about us than maybe we really thought was known about us. But the studies help us focus on the fact we obviously have to overcome the idea that it's cold here 13 months out of the year. So there's some good studies. They have developed a plethora of very targeted market pieces to different market segments. And they've looked at what is that market segment looking at when they're looking to establish a place to do a business, and then they've compiled the necessary facts and figures related to that type of a business. There's one on data centers, and they're very targeted in that so that they can quickly get information out to a company that might be looking at our region. Last year, which is really their first full year of total operational movement, they noted they had quite a few accomplishments. They, in fact, brought 31 new companies to the greater MSP region. Those companies located in 19 different cities. 15 of the companies actually located in cities that are not contributing members of greater MSP. And you need to remember that the job of greater MSP is to market the region. So they are going to take a client to wherever in the region is going to best meet those clients' needs. It is not dependent on whether or not that city is a contributing member. All of the counties in which the business is located in are contributing members of greater MSP. Those efforts resulted in 4,800 new jobs in the region and $451 million worth of capital investment. Greater MSP has a target, year-by-year target, stretching out to 2016, and at the end of 2012, they were actually ahead of their targets for their growth through 2016. So they're actually getting out of the gate a lot faster than they were originally targeting that they would do. Specific to Burnsville and the accomplishments through Greater MSP to Burnsville, you may recall we reported here last year that we had the CEO of Phillips Lighting come to Burnsville, spend a day with us, do a tour. Greater MSP participated in that tour and gave the CEO kind of the overview of what's available in the region while we were drilling down to more specifically what would be available in the city of Burnsville for them. We did receive about 12 to 15 requests from Greater MSP last year, and typically what they'll do is email us a request saying we have a client that does XYZ, they need this much space or this much land, and they need these kinds of things, 18-foot ceilings or whatever. If you have a property or a building that matches those specs, will you get this information to us? And typically we're looking at like a day or two turnaround because they're going back to a national site selector. We had about 12 or 15 of those last year that came our way. We did have one prospect visit. Greater MSP brought a prospect out to Burnsville and actually showed them one of our buildings. So far this year, we've already had 5 requests. 4 of those requests, unfortunately, were for land or space larger than we could accommodate. One of those requests, for example, was for 20 to 25 acres of land. Obviously, we do not have that available in Burnsville. A number of the building requests were for 100, 150, 250,000 square feet of available space to be leased. Good news is we don't have any buildings that big that are empty. Bad news, we obviously couldn't supply them with anything. And we did about 2 weeks ago have a request from Greater MSP to supply them with some information regarding incentives. There is a company that is looking at 2 cities in the region, us and one other city, and they're also looking at another city in another state as a possible place to take their business. We did supply Greater MSP with some information on our abatement policy and gave them some ideas of how we might be able to utilize the abatement policy with them. It appears that the client is more interested in leasing than building, but we did also supply Greater MSP with information that if they were going to build, we could possibly do some TIF for them. And we did tell them that we may be able to actually supply them land to build on if they decided to build instead of lease. We might be able to supply them some land at obviously a very, very reasonable cost. We have not heard back on that request, but like I said, it's between us and another city and then another city in another state. So that's kind of a general idea of what the type of requests we've gotten last year and this year. And again, Commissioners, Mr. Chair, I would stand for questions and/or if there's any comments from the Commission.
Commissioner Klepke?
I have a question. 2 questions, actually. One is a broader issue on the Greater MSP. Is you have these the wins for 2012. What was the total amount of contribution from all the cities that went into that to generate that kind of results? We're doing 25,000 a year.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Klepke, I don't have that information. I can tell you that the Greater MSP budget is about $4 million.
Mm-hmm.
Contributions are based on population size.
Mm-hmm. So their budget's $4 million then?
Yes.
Okay.
So, based on our population, their ask of us is 25,000.
Okay.
Put it in perspective, Bloomington's ask is, I think, 100,000. Dakota County, their ask is 150,000. So it's all based on populations.
Then my next part of that question was, when you talk about abatement policy, I know when I was with my previous employer and we were looking around the state for opening some call centers, and it is a very important consideration when you're looking at the overall impact to put up a 30, 40, or 50,000 square foot building. It would sort of either abatement, and 3 of these communities they threw in the land and all the utilities and connections up and things like that. How far does Burnsville want or was willing to go on things like that?
Commissioner Klepke, actually, we could have done some of those, but this request, the way it was framed, it was apparent that the client was more interested in leasing space than building. So if they're going to lease space, the closest we could come to help them was with our abatement policy, and we would have to have configured some things with their abatement policy. Actual dollars, we can't really tell you what those dollars are because we're not far enough along in the process to know that. This was a very, very generic, very basic, here's what they're doing. For example, the representative from Greater MSP could not tell me what the company did, nor could they tell me who the company was, because they couldn't get that information from the National Site Selector. So this was a very preliminary. All of those things that you mentioned are tools in the right specific situations that we possibly could use. Us giving land is tough because we don't possess that much land anymore in Burnsville. But yes, I'm aware that there are opportunities where communities will virtually give the land to a company.
Chris?
You said there was 12 to 15 requests. Is that about what you expected from Greater MSP, or what were your expectations on that? Is it higher, lower?
That's an interesting question, Commissioner John. I don't know that I had a specific how many I would get. You know, we basically, when we get the request, you know, we answer the request. They do a little bit of targeting. Obviously, if a client would say that they're only interested in locating directly in Minneapolis and St. Paul, they would not send that request to us. There's no point. If there are other qualifiers that they know would knock Burnsville out, we're not going to get that. If it's close, they'll send us the request anyway. But 12 to 15, that's one a month. I mean, that's not bad.
Okay.
Yes, Commissioner Andretti.
Yeah, I mean, $4 million of contributions from various cities for that kind of capital
Again,
investment.
Commissioners, it's a public-private partnership,
Right.
so there's private money in that
Private money also, but that return is fairly significant. I think the bigger question is how material is $25,000 to the city of Burnsville's budgets, because this is one of those more broader marketing initiatives, and I mean, I would really like to see them recognize the cities that are contributing, especially in the outlying areas where 25 grand is a little more of a material component to their budgets, and then maybe focus, you know, through their marketing, have a city that they're focusing on any given month or whatnot to make more awareness for the city of Burnsville. But unfortunately, it's more of a broader marketing initiative that you're not going to be able to pinpoint specifics. But clearly, it's good for the Twin Cities, and the question becomes: do you participate and be active in it, and is there a benefit for doing that, or do we let Minneapolis and St. Paul foot the bill and get the benefit on the trailer? And so, to me, the materiality of 25 grand a year is the bigger question, because clearly this is a benefit collectively for the city.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner, if you go on Greater MSP's website, they do have all the counties highlighted, and in their annual report, they did list all of their contributors, so the city of Burnsville is listed in there. You're absolutely right, Commissioner Andreski. When you're doing a very large project like this, to be able to highlight an individual city in any type of your marketing material is almost impossible. And again, their mission is to promote the region, and if the region grows, in theory, we all grow. In your background, they supplied you, with some data maps of where those businesses were, and they were within a circumference of a drive time that residents in Burnsville could drive to and work. So obviously, any jobs that come here have some possible benefit, to the city of Burnsville. But we're not, unfortunately, they're not in a position where they can just specifically market one city.
But as a city, we have great relationships within the greater MSP also. I mean, and that, I think, has to be a factor also.
Mr. Manhouse, questions I've got is 31 wins. What is a win?
That is a company that was brought into the region that did not exist in the region prior to 2012. So that's a new company.
Established in the region.
In the region, correct.
Based on 4,800 jobs, what's a base on that? How much did they, in other words, a year before, without MSP, what were the job increases?
The way I can't specifically answer your question, Commissioner, but the way I can answer your question is the goals that have been provided, that Greater MSP is striving for, their goal is to increase by 25% what normally would happen if they did not exist. So when they look out over their spreadsheet from last year till 2016, they're saying if this much would happen based on what's gone on in the past, we want to up that by 25%.
And did that happen?
They are on target. They're actually ahead of target to do that.
Any other questions?
Well, just doing the math on that, it was about $830 a job, which is very, very cheap type of an incentive. Very cheap. So
When
that's,
the capital investment.
yeah, well, that's, yeah.
That to me is the biggest, I think, benefit of
Right.
this. And that's why it goes back to me, to the materiality of our budget as a city. Is the 25 grand that, material to the benefit that collectively everybody's getting. Because to your point, Skip, if someone goes to Bloomington, they're coming to eat in restaurants in Burnsville. They're coming down to the Burnsville Center if they got to pick something up. So there's some indirect benefit too.
No other comments? Questions?
And how many years was our commitment? We're in the third year. Was it 6-year commitment, 4-year?
I believe they're hoping that we will continue to do this forever.
I don't think we've committed to a period.
It goes on in the budget cycle on a yearly basis. Every
Okay.
year,
Okay.
City Council makes a determination. But if you're Greater MSP and you've had a partner for 3 years, I'm sure you're hoping that we'll continue to be your partner for the rest of your existence.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mr. Chair, if I could, do you want a yearly we get a yearly update from Greater MSP. Do you want a yearly update such as this included on your agendas also?
And I would like a comparison against last year in that report.
Okay. You can easily do that.
See if they're making progress.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you, Mr. Nanhouse. Okay, we've got the next thing on the agenda. That was for review. Skip gave us just the information. We don't have to make a comment beyond that. And we thank you for it. Okay, sale of former AAA land.
If I could, Mr. Chair, let me switch PowerPoints. The land in question, this is actually a map that was provided in the RFP we did in 2011 for AAA. The land in question is what's noted right here as the RFP site. It's that vacant land sitting next to our parking deck, sitting right next to the Performing Arts Center. This whole area in here of land all was originally owned by AAA, and in the early 2000s the city purchased all of that land. Obviously, the Performing Arts Center, the parking deck, and Med Cruz Restaurant have developed on this part of the land we purchased, and this is the final piece that was left. We've been in discussions with a developer, a hotel developer, for a number of months, and staff has gotten to an agreement point. And what we'd like to provide to you is those points of agreement in our purchase and redevelopment contract, and would be looking for a recommendation that would be carried forth to the EDA, which would meet on this item on June 4th. The original purchase was 6.24 acres. As I said, the PAC, the Med Cruz Cafe, the parking deck all sit on the sites. The remaining piece is 1.75 acres. The county currently has that remaining piece of land valued at $457,600. The developer had the land appraised in May of last year and received an appraisal for $737,000. The city had the land appraised in August of last year, and the appraisal was $865,000. Obviously, there's a difference between the appraisals, and there's a difference between the appraisals and the value. One of the things to remember about appraisals is appraisals are based on comp sales. And to get comp sales, you had to go back to prior to the recession, because there wasn't a land being sold during the 3 months or 3 years of recession. So the comps are pretty much based on land sales that were occurring at the height. The purchase price that's been offered for the land is $503,600. That will not constitute a subsidy. The subsidy law states that if the purchase price is 70% or more of the county value of the property, it is not a business subsidy. Obviously, the purchase price is in excess of the county's value, so it is not a subsidy. The developer is also going to be contributing an additional $28,000 that will be used by the city to put in 12 to 14 parking stalls on Travelers Trail. Those stalls will remain publicly owned and can be used by anybody. The hotel developer obviously would be looking to steer their employees to those stalls when they get to work to take up those stalls. The current proposal would be for a 90-unit hotel. It would have a restaurant, it would have meeting space, and there would be 55 parking stalls on the property right outside the door. And those 55 are in excess of the 12 to 14 that they're paying us to put out on Travelers Trail. The contract calls, as you know from all of our development contracts, has a construction commencement date, and that date is 90 days after they get their PUD approval. And in the contract, it does stipulate that they must have applied for a PUD no later than January 31st of next year. The typical PUD approval process will be 60 days. So we are looking at a construction commencement probably somewhere in the June, maybe July timeframe of next year. The completion of construction has to be within 1 year of when they start. So we're looking at a completion of most likely no later than June or July of 2015. The city is going to expand the existing Heart of the City parking deck that will sit right next to the land. When the deck was originally built, it was built with the intent that it would be expanded. If you recall if you've ever been out at the deck, the second level does not go completely across all of the base level parking stalls. It was always intended that that deck would be expanded. We actually, right now, between some grants and some TIF money, we have enough money to expand that upper deck about halfway. And we are actually attempting to go after another grant that if we got that grant, we could expand the deck completely when we are done. There are some outstanding assessments on the property to the tune of about $33,000. The city will pay those assessments. The developer is seeking absolutely no public assistance on this project. It will be all private money. We estimate that the value of the hotel, once it's completed, will be about $3.5 million. And our finance department has calculated that that would result in about $125,000 per year of taxes for that property. That's the complete total tax bill, not just the city portion. And then we do have special Heart of the City assessments for the lighting and the baskets and things like that. That property will be subject to those assessments also. So their tax payable will be a little bit more than $125,000. The original Heart of the City plan did call for a small hotel, a theater, public parking, residential, mixed use, open spaces. If you look at all of those things that were in the original plan, there's only one missing, and that's the piece that's on the table right now, is to bring the hotel in. The hotel is consistent with zoning in the Heart of the City, and it has been a desired development by the EDA and the city since the early 2000s when we put the plan together. It's always been named in all of our RFPs as a possibility of what you could build on that land. Staff would recommend that the EDC recommend to the EDA to approve the land sale, and I would certainly stand for any question the Commission has.
Mr. Simic?
When you look at the location of that building in relationship to, with only 55 parking spaces and assuming they get another 12, so they're up to 77. They got staff and then 90 rooms. If it's maxed out in capacity, you're parking somewhere else, and that's going to be in the public parking?
Again,
Is that close enough proximity, do you think it would work?
Again, Commissioner Kleppe, when you look at the heart of the city, it is designed to be a high-density development, and it is designed to have shared parking. It has always been assumed that that parking deck would be shared by the PAC, the med crews, whatever goes on the property of the hotel, as is the original parking ramp is shared by everybody in Grand Market Square, everybody in Grand Market Plaza, anybody else that happens to be in the area. So the whole concept, yes, is that everyone would share in all of this parking. Similar to downtown Minneapolis or St. Paul, where you share in the parking.
Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Sorry.
if I can
Annie,
add-
go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioners, we're also looking at expansion to that parking deck that Skip noted. That would add an additional, I want to say, 44 stalls. So that, when you do the math, the 90 stalls, there will be more than 90 new stalls added.
I wasn't questioning about that, is whether or not it's, the proximity would be reasonable with the hotel. Would they use it? Would they think it is a viable solution for them, for hotel guests to be parking on the ramp?
Yes, they do. As a matter of fact, they are contemplating actually having a ramp from the second level of our parking deck that would connect to their hotel. It would not be an enclosed ramp, it would be an open ramp. So you'd have the same, if, for example, like the Mall of America, if you look at, they have ramps coming across at the second level, you could still drive underneath of it. Well, in our case, you would still be able to drive underneath of it, but they could walk from that second deck right over to the second floor of the hotel. If they park on the lower deck, they could walk right across the street. Obviously, if they park on their parking lot, they're right there. In most cases, quite frankly, the parking in the parking deck probably would be almost as close to the hotel as it is to the Performing Arts Center if you're parked on the far part of the deck. Obviously, if you're parked right next to the Performing Arts Center, you can run in there pretty quick. Interestingly enough, they do not seem to have any concerns about utilization of the parking deck for their additional parking.
Yes.
What's standard parking for a hotel? Is there a room to parking stall ratio?
Yes, there is.
And does that meet it even without the deck?
No. No, we're not close.
Okay.
No, but again, the
Okay.
concept of the heart of the city is high-density, urban-type development.
How close?
I believe my boss thinks she still has the answer in her mind.
Well, what I was going to say, Commissioners, is it all depends on the land use that is active at the moment. So when there's also the parking ramp that is on the south side across the street by Jensen's Cafe and Wells Fargo that is underutilized. And right now, with that banquet center not being in operation, there's plenty of parking over there. There's plenty adequate parking right now when there's an event at the PAC. If in the future the event center is up and running, so there's a Saturday night event at that event center, there's a Saturday night event at the BPAC, and the hotel rooms are full, then we could have an issue. So parking has always been an amenity and a benefit to the BPAC. When you go there, when you talk to people who've been there, you know, first thing they say is how beautiful a facility it is. The second thing they say is the parking, and it's great to get in and out of there. And we recognize that that is something that we need to preserve to make it a continued desirable place for people to visit. So right now, is there enough parking there? Yes. When the other uses in the banquet center at Grand Market Square fills up, and as other uses come into heart of this city, there could be problems in the future. So we want to do what we can now to negate what those future negative parking impacts would be.
Go ahead.
I had a question too, on the long-term prospects for the BP station. Is that something that, does the city have any designs on relocating that?
No.
No? So it's there to stay?
My understanding is they would sell for the right price.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, Chris, Mr. Johns?
Yeah, I can see some of the, this might be preliminary plans, there's some conference spaces in the hotel. Are they planning on having a banquet room or anything for weddings or things of that nature?
The preliminary plans, as I understand it, Commissioner John, is that those meeting spaces would have the collapsible walls, so they could go back and forth. I think there is some thought that once everything is up and running, there may be some way to do a partnership with the Performing Arts Center, because obviously we have a very large space that can be used for, banquets and everything else. We have no place close where you could stay after the wedding. Conceivably, you could do a big presentation in our theater and do your breakouts over in there. All of those things are obviously the types of things that we would hope to have discussions after this project moves forward.
The purchase price of $503,600. How did we arrive at that, and do we think that's a good price, a fair price, or?
Excellent question, Commissioner Silky. That price is actually almost a wash with what we paid for the land. If you take, when we bought the original AAA land, the piece that was left over actually comes to $504,000 that we paid for. So it's about a wash. That price is also very similar to what the other part of the AAA property that we sold to the Med Cruz Cafe. It's very similar to the price that Med Cruz paid for that. So it's kind of in keeping with what happened in the area.
Okay.
Yeah,
Commissioner?
just to comment on the price. I mean, I think you can disregard the appraisals. I mean, it's been on the market for 4 years. This is an offer, a private offer with no strings attached, plus there's $125,000 of opportunity cost the city's losing. So I think, in my opinion, the price is accurate, and I think the appraisals are misrepresented if it's been on the market for 4 years. And
Question, Mr. Ninos. To build a building in a year should be not a problem, but what if they don't? What is the penalty?
All of our contracts, Mr. Chairman, have a number of default options. If you default on the contract, not completing the construction is a default. At the easiest end, we can talk to the developer, and the developer can say, I'm 35 days late, but I'll have it done, and we can say, okay, fine. At the worst end, if the EDA wishes, they can actually take the land back. They would then instruct city staff to once again market the land, and whatever it cost city staff to market the land would be subtracted from what was originally paid by the developer for the land, and the resulting amount left over is what would be given back to the developer at whatever time it took us to resell the land.
Any other questions, gentlemen? Okay, I think the council is looking for a recommendation from us. Do we have a recommendation?
I would make a motion to accept the recommendation that we move forward to that.
second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? There's a recommendation.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Are you also doing the updates?
Yeah, but I thought I'd do that more.
Sure, why don't you sit down and relax?
Commissioners, in your packet was supplied an activity report for the month of April for our STEM activities. Typically, that report is a 2-month report, but as you may remember, we moved our meeting to April last year, and you got a 3-month report. So this time, you got a 1-month report. I would only bring to your attention 2 items on the activity report. I did note that we did submit a grant application to Met Council for the deck. That is the Heart of the City deck that we just discussed. That we've already received 1 grant from the Dakota County CDA for that deck expansion. This second grant, if we could get it, would actually allow us to do the complete deck expansion. And then last week, we did exhibit at the MHTA Spring Conference. That's the Minnesota High Tech Association Spring Conference. We had a lot of very nice contacts there. We actually were right next to the city of Lakeville, who actually had a booth. And probably the question we got asked the most is, why is a city here? And when it was explained that we're looking for high-tech jobs and trying to get the message out, the next response was, oh, yeah, that's kind of logical. I guess you would be here. And we did actually have one citizen from a city that will go nameless that said, how come my city's not here? And I would stand for any questions on the activity report if there are any.
Well, I just one question. How much open land does Burnsville have that they could sell? And I suppose that's a long question, because then it's there might be a little section here, an acre here, an acre there, but
Actually, it's a very short question.
oh, None.
Almost. As you may recall, Commissioners, last month we brought you a purchase and redevelopment contract for some land on Cliff and River Ridge. That will
right.
actually go to the EDA on May 21st. If that land, if that is approved and sold, and if this hotel property is approved and sold, there is basically one other piece that we have been actively marketing. That's land at Newton and County Road 42. It has a sign on there. And then there is some land that's referred to as the old fire station land that currently actually went through a whole approval process to have, I believe it was 8 single-family homes built on it, and then we kind of got into the downturn and the deal fell apart. That land, conceivably, we could put back on the market. And that really is, for all intents and purposes, the only land that the city possesses to sell.
Thank you.
No other comments? Is there any other business? Okay, hearing none, I'll take the motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Very good. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners.
You did a nice job. Did a nice job for us. Thank you.